Welcome everyone to our debate for today. Our motion is, this house believes that Untitled Portrait of Ross in LA is art. The for side, consisting of Seva, and Annika See, will argue that the motion that Untitled is indeed art, while the against side, consisting of Shawn and Llave, will argue that Untitled is not art. In this debate, the team shall use a definition of art as prescribed by Oxford Languages, that art is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. Each team must persuade that their arguments are superior. To do this, both teams must present sound logical arguments in an interesting and persuasive speaking style and in a structured and prioritized manner. These are the three aspects of the debate that I, Ninna, as your arbiter, will judge, which will judge. So there. These are actually content, style, and strategy. So we may now start the debate with the four-statement debater, Alex, as our first speaker.
Okay, so good evening to our arbiter, opposition, and audience. So today, we, the affirmative side, take the stance that Untitled is art. So for context, Untitled was created and is located in the Art Institute of Chicago. The work serves as a portrait of Gonzalez-Torres' lover, Ross Laycock, who died from AIDS-related complications. For the elements of the piece, it consists of a multicolored pile of hard candies of 175 pounds, which was the ideal weight of Gonzalez-Torres' late lover, although dimensions vary with installation. The viewers are then encouraged to take a piece of candy from the pile, which the handlers at the institute then replenish afterwards. So according to Oxford Languages, typically in a visual form, reducing works to be appreciated primarily for their emotional power. So that is exactly what Untitled is. First, the installation is an expression of human creative skill in that how Gonzalez-Torres used it was creative and unconventional because it's new and niche. Second, it is visual in the form of an exhibit. Also, looking at the basic semiotic plane, it shares the disappearance of the material presence of his late lover through candy by making a very intimate and sensorial space between the viewer and the piece. Lastly, it is appreciated for its emotional power as it creates an accessible narrative that parallels Ross's body's deterioration from AIDS with the candy pile's slow depletion. So lastly, Untitled fits the art style or genre of conceptual art for which the idea behind the work is more important than the actual finished art object. Conceptual artists use materials and forms most appropriate to get their ideas across, which in Gonzalez-Torres' case was candy.
Okay. Thank you, Alex, for your comments. And now I welcome the next debater, the against statement round one speaker, Shawn Chua, to address the House.
Okay, so Untitled Portrait of Ross in LA is a pile of candy that displays no creativity or skill required to produce it. And viewers can take from the pile of candy, and this candy is also commercially available to everyone. So the selection of the candy isn't really special or creative in any way. Now, the value of the piece is also just really related to the price of the candy, because how else could it be valued? And there's also technically no owner or provenance to this work, since anyone can take a piece of candy from the pile and they will own that piece that they take. And the work's title, Untitled, makes the title have no significance to the meaning of the work. And no special techniques or processes are required to create or replenish this pile of candy. The dimensions and measurements also do not really matter, as it changes every time a candy is taken and every time the pile is replenished. We also believe that the 7 visual elements like line value, shape, texture do not really apply, as the composition is random and it varies. The work also has no format except that the candy should weigh 175 pounds when replenished. And all of these show that the artist really did not exhibit much creativity or skill when creating the piece. Now, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, art is the conscious use of skill and creative imagination, especially in the production of aesthetic objects or works. So based on this definition, this piece would not be counted as art because no conscious use of skill and creative imagination is required when producing or replenishing the pile. Moreover, even the candy itself is just bought from a shop, and candies are made in factories. So the pile of candy is really not much different to a free candy dispenser that people can get candy from. So all of these show that the artist really did not exhibit any creativity or skill. So the pile of candy is not art.
Thank you, Shawn, for the against statement. We will now go to round 2 and welcome the next debater, the statement rebuttal, Annika See, to address the House.
Good evening, everyone. So, as you just heard, the opposition argues that just because this artwork is unconventional, it automatically means that it didn't require any skill or creativity to create, and that automatically means that it is not art. We argue that this is a misconception because the piece is innovative and consists of elements that the artist thought of in order to convey the message that he wanted to share. This makes use of the artist's creativity and own personal context in order to create an interactive piece that many are able to find meaning in. So another thing that makes this piece art is that the artist had an obvious intent in the meaning that he wanted to convey. Viewing it from the contextual plane, it was stated that the piece was an expression of grief, as the artist had lost his lover in the AIDS epidemic. The diminishing candy represents the hopelessness of the time and how many with AIDS wasted away or had their weight fluctuate before they succumbed to the illness. And although the opposition believes that it is easily replicable, not every pile of candy is assigned a specific meaning or was placed with an intent to convey a message. We argue that this is what separates this piece from other piles of candy and what allows it to be art. On a more technical note, we believe that the elements of art are still noticeable in this work. So for one thing, the pieces of candy are uniform, and despite their varying hue, this is the medium that the artist chose to play with, and there's a noticeable structure in the shape that the pile forms. It's always a slope against the wall, and it's not like candy is haphazardly placed everywhere when it's being replenished. I don't believe that the replenishing candy also detracts from the art because the original pieces are removed, as it has its own meaning and actually adds another layer of meaning. The varying angle of the slope or how high the pile is can also be interpreted as how the human body changes when it is going through an illness. We believe that this is an innovative way to play with a medium, which does make the piece art. Additionally, the opposition does not account for other factors that we do not see, such as the aura or other elements in the semiotic plane, or how other people interact with it. Ultimately, we believe that this piece does qualify as art, as it is the creative expression of the artist's grief, drawn from his own personal experiences that allowed him to conceptualize and form this interactive piece. Thank you.
Thank you to the 4-statement team. We'll now go to our last speaker, Llave, for the against statement rebuttal to address this House.
Over the years, no one has been able to give a clear and precise definition of art, but the closest one that has been given was stated by the opposing team, citing Oxford Languages, art is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination. Following this, the piece should not be considered art. The piece is seen to be a pile of candies, which supposedly represents the weight of the artist's past lover. Each viewer is encouraged to take a piece from it, then relay its message. It can be said that the action of the viewers, which is to take the piece of candy from the bundle, is a form of art. The interaction of the people with the work relays the message the artist would want to communicate to the audience. Without the interactive activity, this is simply just a pile of candies covered in cellophane. No human creative skill is demanded to stack pieces of hard candies together. Additionally, imagination is only seen when a spectator moves and touches the work. The entire pile of candies itself is not the art, but the action of people taking it is the art. With this, it can be said that it is no different from a candy dispenser wherein anyone can just simply grab a piece or reassemble it and then be refilled by others later on. It is appreciated and acknowledged for its beauty and emotional power because the audience gave the capacity to take candies from the pile itself. According to Art Institute of Chicago, the piece of work is made of candies in variously colored wrappers in endless supply. With this, it is evident that the use of the majority of the elements of art was not seen in the piece. For the element of color specifically, the colors of the candy wrappers were variously placed, meaning that there were no significance in the colors of the work. This shows that the element of color was not used in the piece. Some elements can be seen in the piece, though they were simply by chance, which leads to the conclusion that no creativity was involved in using these three elements. In using these elements, it is impossible to create art without using at least one of these seven elements. This then strengthens the statement that Untitled by Felix Gonzalez-Torres should not be considered art. At the end of the day, it is important to remember that anything can be art, but not everything is art.
Oh, okay. So thank you to both teams for presenting your arguments and defending your stance. To synthesize, firstly, the side who argued in favor of Untitled being a work of art, their main argument is that Untitled's innovative and purposeful use of candy in the installation is an expression of human creative skill and hence art. They say that the point of the installation is to symbolize the disappearance of the creator's loved one. Though an argument I think that they could have included is the reason behind the choice of a candy in the pile to symbolize the artist's diminishing body. Why not stones? Why not rocks? So this is because this will further support their argument that the choice of candy was indeed innovative. But they also utilized a strong second argument that explains that Untitled is a work of art due to its technical, artistical elements. They supported this with explanations of the shape, the structure, the form, the color of the candy pile. Lastly, they also utilized a good argument that Untitled is an example of conceptual art, which the message of the work and the intent is more important than the finished object. So this was good. While now to synthesize the opposition, their main argument is that it is not art because the use of the candy in the installation was not creative. It was innately not creative because it's commercially available and the candy was not creatively chosen by the creator and hence it's not art. This is a good argument for the opposition team because I think that the four team actually misses opportunity for them to defend the reasoning behind the choice of the candies. Secondly, the opposition proposed that the action of people taking the candies is the art instead of the actual pile installation. So actually this was rebuked by the four team because they said that the supposed emotional power was indeed behind the intent of that artwork, behind the intent of the pile. So that was the point for the audience to engage with the piece. It was also rebutted by stating that it was conceptual art, an example of conceptual art, and hence these rebuttals by the fourth team actually weakened the opposition's argument. Secondly, they also argued that the installation does not use the elements of art because it's randomly assembled and randomly refilled. But this is also rebutted and explained why these elements are actually used by the fourth team. So I judged both teams according to three parameters. First, the content, which is the strength of the arguments and rebuttals. Second, the style, which is the manner in which you guys spoke. And lastly, strategy, the structure and timing of the speech. So I gave some comments about the choice of arguments and rebuttals earlier in my synthesis. According to those comments, even if I believe the affirmative team can actually support their main arguments and explain why candy was chosen, and this could have even more like defended their main stance, and of course they should have cited more sources, I believe still that the four team was able to defend more in depth why Untitled is a piece of art. Because compared to the opposition team, which provided three main arguments, I believe two of these three arguments were rebuked by the fourth team, and they were able to use this to their advantage to defend their point. Untitled is a piece of art. This adds to their strategy parameter and criteria as they were able to strategically use their rebuttals to further their point and their arguments. The first argument of the opposition team, though, was actually a good starting point for them. They just needed to support their last two arguments more and defend it against the rebuttals of the fourth team. So for style, both teams were able to present the content in a manner in which I understood and which was persuasive. But overall, due to these reasons, the fourth team that said that Untitled is a piece of art is the winner for this debate. Thank you everyone for participating.